Welcome, viewers, to the fifth academic session of our action-oriented Global Tipping Point Summit. We're delighted to see participants from various parts of India and from other countries as well. We'll be happy to take your questions in the chat box. This summit has been conceptualized by the dynamic education futurist, TEDx speaker, internationally acclaimed educator, and storyteller, Dr. Kumi S. Vivina. In October 2016, Dr. Vivina retired as professor and head of the Department of English, University of Mumbai, India. Dr. Vivina has 2 PhD degrees to her credit, one in literature and the other in education. She has published 11 books and 58 papers in peer-reviewed national and critical anthologies. She has won numerous national and international awards. In 2013, her book on education, Sourceful Intelligence, was selected as among the 18 best books published in the USA. And her most recent book, What Children Really Want, has received critical acclaim from educators, psychologists, parents, writers from all over the world. In 2015, she was selected by the world leaders in education as among the 35 women from across the world changing educational paradigms. Dr. Vivina has her own storytelling organization called Wordfully Yours, which hosts storytelling programs and conducts training workshops. I now invite Dr. Vivina to say a few words, after which we request you to watch a short film on the summit. Over to you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nina. And thanks to all of you for being here, all the online participants. A very, very big thank you to our wonderful speakers and change facilitators. A conference of this magnitude could not have happened by me alone. We have 108 people who have been working tirelessly over several months to make this happen. A very, very big thank you to each and every person who has participated in this program. I'll quickly share my screen with you. Just give me a moment, please. Is my screen visible?
Yes, ma'am.
So a very special thank you to our advisory board, comprising Dr. Firoza Godrej, Mr. Naushir Karodi, Mr. Naushir Dadrawala, Mr. Sanjay Rastogi of Tata Trent, Ms. Shehnaz Kama, Mr. Yazdi Tantra, Ms. Debika Chatterjee, Ms. Rakhee Chhabria, and Ms. Fiona, our speaker for today, Ms. Fiona Reynolds. A very, very special thank you goes out to my summit coordinator, Donna Reen. Donna has been living through it for about a year and a half now. Phone calls at any time of the day or night, preferably not night, but she has been working with me shoulder to shoulder. A very, very big thank you to you, Donna. And to our core committee, again on the core committee is Mr. Yazdi Tantra, Deepa Soman, Mr. Milind Soman, Glenn Concessio, Mr. Bhavin Shah. Our partners are Tata Trent, Tantra Tech, K Merck, Lumiere Business Solutions, Education World, Parents World, Penultimate, Teachers Help Teachers, First Moms Club, and Wolves. The short film you saw at the beginning was made by Wolves. We have been extremely fortunate to receive heartening messages from luminaries like the Dalai Lama. In his long letter, the Dalai Lama makes several interesting points about what he likes about the Global Tipping Point Summit. In particular, the Dalai Lama says, I am pleased to know about the Global Tipping Point Summit and its focus on improving the present education system so that our younger generation can become more responsible citizens of our planet. The letter is available on the net and you can read it. We also have some goodwill messages from Lieutenant General Shokin Chauhan, Dr. Kersi Chowda, who's one of the leading psychiatrists in India, Mr. Shamak Dava, who is an internationally acclaimed choreographer, singer, performer, and entertainment director. Shri M, a spiritual guide, social reformer, educationist, and Padma Shri awardee. Cyrus Brocha, who has also done an interesting podcast with me, a TV anchor, theater personality, comedian, podcaster, and author. And Mr. Baman Irani, a theater and film actor, voice artist, and photographer. A big thank you to everyone. Yes, Nina, you could take over.
Thank you, ma'am.
The online Global Tipping Point Summit from November this year to January 2021 is designed to explore paradigm shifts in education and parenting in an innovative way. Our aim is to create healthy learning and nurturing ecosystems by combining knowledge with self-awareness and wisdom to transform our lack-based consciousness into one rooted in abundance. Who will be attending the summit? Policymakers and education board authorities, principals, teachers, college and university professors, parents, caregivers, librarians, counselors, students, and anyone who's interested in education and parenting. What do we do differently? We have world-class visionaries and thought leaders as speakers who will expound their ideas and point the way in the right direction. They will be supported by far in the belly change facilitators who will suggest effective and practical ways of implementing the ideas of the speakers. At the online summit, participants will be invited to form action groups in the areas of their choice and to create the change they wish to see in the world. By 2025, we hope to reach out to as many people as possible through face-to-face and online talks and workshops. Come, be a part of the change. For more details on the summit, please visit our website www.gtps4change.org. See you there.
After watching that short film, we are now ready to welcome our first speaker of the day, Ms. Fiona Reynolds. She is the deputy head of the school at the American School of Bombay. She has worked and been a leader in international schools for 20 years in Africa, Asia, Europe, and South America. Her current areas of interest are developing intercultural competence in all stakeholders in international schools, developing partnerships between international and local schools, and strategic planning. She has presented at a variety of conferences on nurturing schools, organizing schools for change, using space to transform learning, using data to enhance conversation about learning, and a variety of approaches to teaching and learning. She is also an adaptive schools trainer. Fiona is honored to be on the academic boards of 321 Education and Apni Shala. Welcome, Ms. Reynolds, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Nina, and thank you to Dr. Kumi as well for inviting me to be a part of the Global Tipping Point Summit. And back when the planning for this happened, we had no idea where we would be in December of 2020 and what the world would be like. And our topic for today has perhaps become more important than ever. So welcome to all who are here with us. And before we start, I wanted to just ask us to take a moment to give thanks to all the people who have helped us to be here. And that might be your schools, that might be your partners, and your families, and that might be your colleagues here, there, and all over the world. And I thought we could also take a moment to remember those who are not with us and those who we have not seen in too much time, and say a quick thank you to them for who they are in our lives. When we talk about mindfulness, what we want is to have a mind that is clear and present. Unfortunately, for many of us, especially now, our minds are not clear and present. They are full of ideas and things to do and anxieties and worries. And when that happens, we are much less able to really focus and to know what's important in our lives. And this is more true for educators and for leaders than almost anybody else. And so we hope that through our work together today, but also in the action groups moving into the future, we can get from mindful to mindful. And just to get a sense of what this means, I'm going to invite everyone out there to go to grab a device. It can be your computer or it can be a phone or something else, and go to www.menti.com. And once you're there, you can see a code at the top of this slide, 57 51 79 7. You're going to enter that code and it will bring you to a page, a slide that looks like this. And what we invite you to do is to start writing down all of the different jobs that you have, or the different tasks that you have as a teacher or a leader, or perhaps even as a parent. And what's going to happen, is we're going to start to see all of your answers come live for us. I see that 3 people so far are on there, and I imagine there are a few more people out there who are going to be adding ideas for what are the roles and tasks that you have as a teacher or a leader. I believe there are over 100 people watching, so I know there are more than 4 people who are probably able to tell us what it is that's on your mind. I love that innovating and listening are at the core of what we're seeing here. The notion of a teacher or a leader as a facilitator really resonates. And in this time when so many of our kids are learning from home, that parenting and teaching has become even more interlaced than ever before. I know that the families and the parents in our school have a much deeper appreciation for what it is to be a teacher today than perhaps 6 months ago. Now, this list, we can already see with all that's happening here, there is so much that goes into being a teacher and a leader. And I invite people to continue to add onto that, and we can come back to it. But it just means that it's very hard for us to just live in this moment. And so with knowing that all of that is going on in your heads right now, we're going to take a moment for a grounding exercise. So I'm going to invite everyone to pause on that menti and do this 5 senses exercise with me. This is a quick mindfulness exercise, and you can do it in about 1 to 2 minutes in just about any situation. And I'm going to invite you to notice 5 things that you can see. Look around you and bring your attention to 5 things that you can see. Pick something that you normally wouldn't notice, like a shadow or a small crack in the wall. Notice 4 things that you can feel. Bring awareness to 4 things that you are currently feeling, like the texture of your shirt, the feeling of the breeze on your skin, or the smooth surface of the table you are resting your hands on. Now notice 3 things you can hear. Take a moment to listen and note 3 things that you can hear in the background. This can be the chirp of a bird, the hum of a refrigerator, or perhaps the sound of traffic just outside the window. Now bring your awareness to smells that you usually filter out, whether they're pleasant or unpleasant. Perhaps the breeze is carrying a whiff of a tree, or if you're outside, you can smell the restaurant across the street. And now notice 1 thing you can taste. Focus on 1 thing that you can taste right now. You can take a sip of a drink, chew a piece of gum, or notice the current taste in your mouth, or even open your mouth to search the air for a taste. And now I invite you back into the presentation. This grounding exercise is a quick and easy way to bring a mindful state. And if you have a minute or 2, the 5 senses exercise can help you in your class, with your faculty, or even with your family. I did this with my children earlier today, and when I said the first, notice 5 things you don't usually see, they looked at each other. That wasn't what I was hoping for. So when we ground like that, when we're able to get ourselves into the present moment, it helps us to connect with who we are at this time. As I was going through that exercise, I noticed people closing their eyes. I noticed people starting to move their necks, suddenly aware of things that were happening in their bodies that perhaps they weren't aware of before, and then being able to adjust. And that's what we want with mindfulness. Lauren Schuster, who is the Chief People Officer at Lego, and Lego is a company, remember, that's about moving and touching and manipulating things. But what she says is that without grounding, we're not able to be present to play, to do the things that are important in our lives. And with that in mind, every time you see this blue bubble, we're going to ask you to engage with us. We're going to ask you to add information into the chat. So the first question for you is, how might a grounding like this in your classroom or in a meeting support your productivity, support you in being better able to do your job? And I appreciate that we heard the birds chirping. certainly the mind is receptive. You feel connected, really focused. And that calming the minds couldn't come at a more important time. Thank you to those who were able to contribute there. So what exactly is being a mindful leader or being mindful? To start that off, we wanted to just give a definition for what mindfulness is and what it helps us to do. So mindfulness is just really a way to train our brains to be present and aware of the moment. And in this diagram, what you see is all of the disconnected parts and bringing it together into connection and pattern. I was reading in a book the other day that somebody had gone to a guru and was upset because there seemed to be so much chaos in their lives. And the guru said, look at this carpet. And they looked at the carpet together, and he turned it over to the backside. And on the backside, there are lots of strings and things seem disconnected. But then when you turn it over, what you see is the pattern, the beautiful pattern, the intricate pattern that was also always there. And so mindfulness helps us to take all the disconnected and start to see the patterns in our lives and see the beauty that is there. Bill George, who is a professor at Harvard University, he is also a proponent of mindfulness in a business setting. And for him, he says, the practice of mindful leadership gives you tools to measure and manage your life as you're living it. It teaches you to pay attention to the present moment, recognizing your feelings and emotions and keeping them under control, especially when faced with highly stressful situations, which for many people is a lot of the time now. When you are mindful, you're aware of your presence and the ways you impact other people. And this part of awareness of how you impact other people in a classroom or when you're working with your colleagues it is incredibly important, because if you're aware of what energy you're giving, you're better able to use that energy to create the good that you want in the world. So being both an observer and a participant in the moment allows you to recognize the implications of your actions for the long term. And that prevents you from slipping into a life that pulls you away from your values. So if all we're doing is acting, reacting, we're not taking the time that we need to really think about what is important here generally, but what is important here to me, and is what I'm doing something that's going to further a sense of who I am and what is right in the world. Now, we saw this Harvard professor talk about that, but 2,200 years ago, Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras also talked about the importance of being mindful. And yoga, of course, there's 8 limbs to yoga, and mindfulness or being mindful is only one small part of those 8 limbs. I want to recognize that. But in yoga, Patanjali says that all that you do is really just to help you to be present to right now. And for Patanjali, the definition is just stilling of the mind. So this idea, this notion of being present has been important to us as human beings for not even centuries, for millennium. And what we are experiencing now is similar to what our ancestors experienced, and they had the wisdom then, and we're trying to regain that wisdom now to be able to live in this present and be aware of this present. So we've looked at what being mindful and being a mindful leader is, and now we want to look at why this is important. And the first research comes, or the first two pieces of research we're going to look at comes from the business world. And in Bain & Company, which works with venture capitalists and is really an advisory company to Fortune 500 organizations, looked at what are the most important traits of a leader. And of those important traits, the ability to be mindfully present was the most essential of all. And I can say as a leader in a school, this is what I have found as well. So let's take a moment, and again in the chat, we're going to invite you to think about and share, why do you suppose that being present in the moment is most essential as a leader? And when we're talking about as a leader, we're not just talking about of an organization, we're talking about in a classroom, it could be in your family. So leadership happens in many ways. And if you're a student, it's also you being a leader and advisor for other students in your school. So let's have some reflections in the chat. I love that being in the present moment helps you to decode a situation easily. In adaptive schools, we say, go to the balcony, that you're able to sort of pull yourself out of the moment, look at what's happening, and then be able to respond in a way that's going to be supportive of the whole group and not just relaxing, or sorry, reacting, not relaxing. I love that you can deal with the issues of being a parent without bias, or with less bias anyway. I know that I am always biased with my children. Being sensitive to other people's needs. As leaders, much of what our roles are is to be aware of what do other people need and to help them to find solutions to problems, but also to get things out of the way so that the people that you're working with can be successful. And of course, that's the same in a classroom. And thank you to Urja, that it allows you to be empathetic and put away all of those other voices in your head that may be ego-based and be able to instead think about what's best for the whole group. So many wonderful reflections there. Really appreciate you engaging with us in that. So here's another piece of research, and this as many of us know, in education, it's very hard to have a gold stand to meet the gold standard in doing a study, because in a classroom there are so many different factors going on, and it's so complex that to be able to look at just one factor as having an influence is really difficult. So, but this is one study of using a mindfulness program with a group of teachers. There was a group of teachers who participated in the program and a group of teachers who didn't. And in following up after the teachers were involved in the mindfulness program, what they found is that, first of all, the teachers were able to regulate their emotions better. And when you think about a classroom, that ability to be present, but also to think about, well, how am I reacting, or how am I showing up right now, and what impact might this have on my students, is hugely important, because what we know is that students react to whatever emotion the teacher brings to the classroom. So if they are upset, the kids, whether you say it or not, they know it. So if you're aware that you're upset and then choose actions and choose ways to be able to put that aside, or to acknowledge it, the kids they're not going to see incoherence in your actions and your words. Obviously, lowering rates of anxiety and exhaustion for teachers and leaders is a huge benefit. And then all of that leads to children feeling as well as teachers feeling that they're more supportive. And I think the most telling part of this research is the follow-up study a year later, that the teachers who were part of this program, they were able to hold on to these characteristics beyond the time of the initial study. And so when we think about being mindful teachers and mindful leaders, if this can have this sort of impact on us after a short training, and might I share that we will be offering a short training as follow-ups to our session here today, what a great influence that will have for children and for our organizations. And finally, this is pretty huge for leaders, that if you are a mindful leader, not only does it support you, but it actually impacts the performance of everyone that you work with. So if you are being mindful and you're being present, it allows other people to do the same. And that sense, that presence and awareness of who we are and how we're feeling and how we want to be in the world, then allows our team to feel better, to be more productive, to be more collaborative, and to have a sense of what we are doing is important and is worthy of our time and worthy of our attention. So if you think about this for children as well, so if this is what the teacher is doing, then the academic performance of children is going to be better because of the mindfulness of our teachers. So knowing this and thinking about an action project, what are some commitments that you could make to bringing mindfulness into your practice as a leader and as a teacher, because teachers are leaders? We're going to ask again to pause and to have you add some of your thinking into the chat. And the reason that, by the way, that we do this, that we're asking you to engage with us, is because the people doing the thinking or the talking, or in this case, the typing, are doing the thinking. And for learning, it's the people doing the thinking or it's when you're doing the thinking and the analyzing and the reflection that it's really going to become more a part of you and a part of your approaches in the future, and it helps it to stick in your brain. So please join us in the chat. Tell us, what commitments might you make? And this might feel big right now, but I'll just give an example. You could make a commitment to doing a 5-minute mindful exercise every day and see what difference it will make. Oh, lovely. So a commitment to calming students' minds. So 2 or 3 minutes of a mindful exercise that could be supportive of children. Inner smile meditation. I definitely want to know more about that. I see Nupur, she's sharing that with this mindful practice, then attending to different neuroatypical learners and being more aware of who they might, of what they might need in that moment. Through a mindful meditation, being more aware of what students need. Oh my goodness, what a beautiful image there, painting souls with inner emotions through art. So absolutely using art as a mindful practice. Thank you for your engagement here. And the reason that I wanted to have everyone think about what could I do in my setting or in my situation is because of fractalness. And for those of you who are science teachers, you may recall that fractalness is when a pattern repeats itself. Usually we see it all the time in nature, we see it in math, and we also see it in organizations. Organizations something can start in an organization at a classroom level, it can start in a leadership team, it can start in a department. And if it is a practice that is consistently followed, that practice then repeats itself over and over again in an organization. So if you are a classroom teacher and you start a mindful practice, that practice can have ripples and repeat with children inside school, outside school. It could happen with your colleagues, and that can go to the leadership team level and then all the way to the board level. So no matter where pattern, mindful in this case, pattern starts, it gives us opportunities to be able to have a large impact on the organizations, our families, and the people that are most important to us. So the next part of what we want to dig into is the how. And one of the most important lessons I've learned in my life is when you need to do something, find really smart people, generally smarter than you are, to be able to work with to make an idea into an action. And so we have 4 incredible change agents that will be working with you moving forward in mindful practice. And I'm going to hand back over to Kumi to be able to talk a little bit more about the change agents and do some introductions.
Thank you, Fiona. That was a wonderful presentation. And I'm not making a cliched statement. It's extremely vital, every word that you've said. Some of you who've attended the youth forum would probably have realized that the youth desire this kind of mindfulness from their teachers. There was this young girl from J.B. Pettit School who spoke about exactly this, about the need to be in the present and the need to be taught that by teachers. I don't know whether the correct word should be taught or the teachers are just mindfully present there as role models, and with mirror neurons, the kids are just picking that up. But there would be less stress in the classroom, there would be less stress at staff meetings, at peer PTA meetings, if only we were mindful. And if that many people can get together to really be mindful, well, we could reach the global tipping point. And mindfulness would probably become a norm then. I'm really very grateful to you. I loved the presentation. I loved the way you presented and involved the audience, Fiona. It was a joy to hear you. Thank you very, very much. And with that, I'd like to share with you very, very quickly what the overall concept of this summit is. This summit is intended to be different from the other conferences and workshops that we normally attend. The speaker, in this case, Fiona, has spoken for 25 minutes. 4 change facilitators who believe in her vision and in her thoughts have been working with her over months. And these 4 change facilitators are going to provide instruction in 4 different areas of mindfulness. Of course, this is true of every session in the summit: education as well as parenting. So the speaker speaks for 20 to 25 minutes. Then we have these wonderful change facilitators who feel that by working collaboratively, we can bring about change. You will soon hear each of them. And then we invite you as online audience to sign up, to sign Google Forms, which are on our website, and request to be a part of the action group. If you are a part of the action group, you get your training from these wonderful people who are experts in this area. And you create your own groups and you try out everything that they've said with your own little communities. At the end of each semester, 3 months maybe, or 6 months, you present an impact report. If there are any problems, you go back to the change facilitators who have provided you with training over 3 hours each. So 3 hours, 4 change facilitators, you get 12 hours of training from experts. And then you are actively working towards change. It's almost become a cliche now to say, be the change to see the change, but all change isn't necessarily good. We must bear that in mind. Also, when we use the word vision, we need to operate with vision. Vision needn't be a positive vision. It's the Dalai Lama who makes a distinction between positive and not so positive. So let's work together. If we really feel that we need a change in the system, let's not sit back and talk about it. Let's get involved in it. Sign up as action group members and take advantage of their expertise and their knowledge. So that is the way the Global Tipping Point Summit has been visualized. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. We now move on to welcome our fire in the belly change facilitators. I enjoy using this quote that ma'am has described change facilitators as. Our first change facilitator is Mr. Rohit Kumar. He works as the CEO at Apni Shala Foundation. He's also a consulting staff at the National Seed Project, USA, working on diversity and inclusion. He holds an MA in Education from the Tata Institute of Social Sciences and a Master's in Software Systems from the Somaya Institute of Management Studies and Research, India. However, he thinks his most important learning comes from having worked with students and educators for over 12 years. Welcome, Mr. Kumar, and over to you.
Thank you, Fiona.
Before we start talking about the different sessions that our change facilitators are going to give, we thought that we would just stop and tell you why and how mindful leadership has been important in each of our practices. And I can start by saying I am by nature an introvert. And so I think listening was something that came easily to me. But when I became a leader, I started to feel like I had to give answers and to respond to not, I'm going to say crisis, but not really crises, but crises that people felt in their lives, whether they were big or small. And I felt myself moving more toward action without thinking. And so developing a mindful practice again helped me to take a step back and to remember to be, all I had to do was be present and to be witness for people, and then to help them to be able to solve problems, opposed to me solving it and then the learning not being owned by the people that I worked with. So for me, the mindful practice just really helped me to become a better leader by being by not trying to solve problems, but trying to help others to do that. Rohit.
For me, Fiona, I think the invitation or the relationship with mindfulness is cultivated over a period of time. When I think of this question, I go back to around 2011 and 12. I was dealing with the grief of my mother's loss. She had recently passed away, and in a classroom, when a student was talking about her own experiences, something triggered in me that then I had to go and seek consultation with my therapist. And my therapist was the one who, for the first time, introduced me to this idea of mindfulness, and that was woven in her practice. And slowly, I kind of, I started kind of understanding what she was kind of inviting me to do. But still, I was resistant because I was this person that what you're saying, that be in the present, work on the self, but there's so much of injustice in the system. What's going to happen about that? Uh, so I kind of went to the therapy, moved out, and then my second invitation came when I saw a really uh, random email when I was working with American School of Bombay, and Cindy Cleary, a really wonderful uh, kind of psychologist in school, was doing an 8-week teacher's course on mindfulness, and that kind of reminded me to come back to it again, and then uh, see the kind of play of life once again with Apni Shala. When we started doing the social emotion learning work, uh, we were invited to do this integration work, and again I had to go work with Sadia Saeed, who's my teacher of mindfulness, and work in last 2 years just working with her in this practice has kind of then reminded me and brought me to realize that uh, it is what it is, and it is here and now. And I think that daily awareness is what brings me to this practice. And I think everything that you spoke in the beginning about when I'm working with people, when I'm working with students, how it kind of guides my way, and that's what brings me to it every day. And I invite Rakhee or Bindiya or Amit to share their journeys.
Yeah, thanks, Rohit. I think my connection with mindfulness got established when in 2019 I attended a 2-day conference held by Search Inside Yourself organization, which is an organization dedicated towards teaching mindfulness in US. And that's when I took a deep dive, and I had just delivered my younger one, so it had been very chaotic for me handling the elder one, then the younger one, and too much of multitasking that we do. So it was kind of I had reached a tipping point, and I think this came as a gift to me at that point in time, where I was given the opportunity to introspect and understand what has happened, where am I heading. And the practices that were given to us were so simple and so effective that I could see a tremendous change in the way I was coping up with my own emotions and handling all the tasks. So that came in as a gift. Of course, as time passes by, things dwindle and your memory fades, and you stop practicing all that you have been. But I think again with this dynamic group, and the topic that we have chosen, which is very very important for us as educators and parents to be mindful. So I think I have been reminded back again to get into this practice, and now also be able to be in a situation where I will be able to share all my learnings with the teaching community. So yes, I think it's really really important for us as parents and educators to be mindful. Over to you, Amit and Vindhya.
Bindiya, you want to go next?
Go ahead, Amit.
Okay, sure. Thank you. So this was an interesting question. When we decided on this question, I actually kind of reflected back, and I could not really pinpoint to one particular instance where I thought, okay, this is the one where I came in touch with mindful practices and leadership, because there were so many dots that kind of I can now see how all those dots were joining and leading me to this. I would say my fascination with music and art and performing arts, and how once I was in those activities, I could completely immerse myself. But the moment I joined my master's degree course, or thereafter my corporate kind of stint with leading multinational organizations and all those, I always found something amiss, and I was trying to figure things out. And in some ways, though I'm not a very religious person, but in seek of spirituality, in the search of trying to figure things out, when I attended a couple of courses, it completely transformed my experience. I for the first time was perhaps able to experience something which I had not experienced hitherto. So it really kind of brought uh, this idea of how it is so important to be present and be mindful about your immersion in that particular moment. So if I were to put a date on it, I think it would be 2012, around 2012, when I started taking online courses and I started reading about these things. So yeah, that's my kind of zigzag journey into mindfulness.
Hi. Um, I think that I would like to think that I have always been mindful, but I don't think I've always been actively mindful. In working with students with learning challenges, I think that there's a natural tendency to sort of stop and think because you have to respond to kids in the moment. But it was really when I started to work with adults, and in we're working with humans all the time, and as teachers and leaders, you're continuously changing roles, right? You're talking to students, and then you're talking to colleagues, and then you're talking to parents. And I know that if I wasn't being mindful, I wouldn't be doing such a great job. So it was probably 2014 or 2015 that I began to bring mindfulness really actively into my practice. And it's short and quick exercises like the one Fiona had you do earlier to just stop before you respond, and I love the non-judgmental, just watching yourself um, be. And I know that Rohit will tell you more about that. So Rohit, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Bindiya. So, folks, the way we have looked at or designed this entire piece for all of you is that in the very first session, we will talk about what exactly is mindfulness. When I will unpack this here, like in next couple of minutes for us, we will feel that, oh, we know this, right? Sadia, my teacher, kind of keeps reminding me that knowing comes in multiple ways. And one of the ways of knowing is actually genuinely experiencing it with all our thoughts and feelings, right? So while I may know certain things cognitively, do I really know it experientially? Do I really know it emotionally, right? And that's what mindfulness invites us to do. When we talk about mindfulness, we talk about, in the first session, we'll be looking at the key pillars of mindfulness. Again, the first pillar is very simply present moment focus. How can we continue to practice to bring ourselves to the present moment? Because as Fiona was talking about, that's all we got. What's happening now is what is happening now, right? And how can we bring our awareness to that? And that can happen in multiple ways. The images that you see on the screen is again the images from various Apni Shala classrooms, from kindergarten to middle school to high school. These are different ways of doing it. How do we do that with ourselves first? How do we do that with our children, our students, our families? And that's something that we'll be unpacking. The second pillar is wise attention. Now, when we are able to bring our awareness to the present moment, what do we want to give our attention to? And we were talking about active listening, right? How can we listen intentionally? How can we talk mindfully? How can we eat mindfully, right? Whatever work I'm doing, am I able to give my wise attention to the work that I'm committing in this moment? So if it is watering a plant, can I do that with a lot of love and attention? If I'm understanding my body, or this is one of the activities we do with our students, about body awareness. Likewise, when I'm doing like simple things like coloring a mandala or writing an exam, how can I bring my wise attention to where the attention should be in this moment, right? The third pillar is non-judgment. I think the Bindiya briefly spoke about that in her story. How can we engage with whatever is coming in this moment with minimal judgment that we pass? And if you look at it right now, also our mind is judging. Is this guy, whatever he's saying, is it making sense? Does it make sense? Right? I mean, take a pause to notice that. What kind of judgments coming to us, right? Is this a good presentation? Is it not a good presentation? Is it even possible? Not possible? I know it. I don't know it, right? The mind is constantly judging, and that's a work function of mind. It is neither right nor wrong. It is what it is. And when we are able to embrace all of it with a little less of judgment, whether it is sadness, anger, fear, happiness, joy, all of it, right? And I think that's when we are able to kind of move and then stay in the present moment to give the attention that we need to give to. The fourth pillar of mindfulness, as we speak about, is equanimity. Being able to create that space for ourselves where we respond instead of reacting. How can we ground ourselves? And this is, you see my lovely Apni Chala team. We bring ourselves to this practice together, sometimes individually, sometimes collectively, because any kind of shift or change requires this ongoing practice, and our mind is not trained for this, right? Our mind is trained to kind of keep jumping. A metaphor that we use is monkey mind, right? It kind of keeps hopping from one place to other. So how do we kind of come to a space where we are taking our time and space and responding to things, responding to events? When COVID happened, can we take that pause to respond? Or am I going to jump on online education, right? That's just an example, right? Thinking about some of these things kind of creates a different ability for us to be able to respond to things in the ways that they should be responded to, right? And the last pillar is compassion. How do we, once we are feeling grounded and more in sync with ourselves, how do we kind of extend that nature of compassion, one to ourselves, but also to everyone around us, right? This is a photograph that you see that where we do a lot of work with teachers in government schools, where we say that compassion is not just person to person, but also how can our systems become more compassionate? How can our policies, our guidelines, our recruitment processes can become compassionate? And when we start thinking about that, because when we are developing social emotional competencies in young people, it is not just that they have to learn it, but also they have to experience it in their ecosystem. So how do we develop that ecosystem that is compassionate and caring? So these are the 5 pillars we will be talking further in detail in our first session. And I will take a pause here to move on to our next session details. Nina, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kumar. We now welcome our next change facilitator, Ms. Rakhee Chhabria, an educationist at heart, learner, and a circle breaker. Rakhee is the founder of Teachers Help Teachers, an online community of educators to share and learn and cater towards tools and curated content in education to help teachers teach better. With more than 18 years of experience as an educator and being a mother of 2 boys, she founded Sai EduServe to help preschools deliver engaging and age-appropriate content, along with training educators to do the same creatively. She is currently pursuing her passion as a social entrepreneur and empowering teachers. Welcome, Ms. Chhabria, and over to you.
Thank you, Nina. Yep. Can I share the presentation? Rohit, would you be able to share the presentation?
Should I share?
Yep, thank you. Right, thanks. Thank you so much, Fiona. So yes, mindfulness in action. Now that we've heard about what is mindfulness, why is it important, and what are the pillars that mindfulness operates upon. So let us understand how is it that we can actually put mindfulness into action, because that's where the difference is going to come about. So I'm going to take a short 2-minute over here to actually narrate a story about the story of Saint Nagarjun and the thief. So let us now get into the story mode, where imagine there is a saint. Let us imagine there was a saint by the name Nagarjun, and he was well revered by all the kings and queens of different kingdoms, and he was well traveled and a very, very wise saint. So being a saint, the only possession that he had was a wooden bowl, and that too he used to beg food, and that's about it. He had no attachment, and he would just roam from one kingdom to the other. So when he was traveling from one kingdom to the other, there was this queen who had actually ordered for a golden bowl because she felt offended seeing the wise saint carrying the wooden bowl and begging from kingdom to kingdom. So she requested the saint and asked and sought his approval to accept the golden bowl, which was studded with diamonds. And she was really surprised that Saint Nagarjuna accepted that bowl and in return gave the wooden bowl to the queen. Now, while the Saint Nagarjuna was traveling on his way from one kingdom to the other, there was this thief who noticed him carrying this golden bowl. And being a thief, he was tempted to know that why is this fakir carrying the golden bowl in his hand? So let me follow him and let me see where he's going to stay put so that I can get a chance to steal that. So while Saint Nagarjuna headed towards the temple to take a breather and rest it out for the night, the thief followed the saint. The thief was hiding behind the pillar of the temple, and Saint Nagarjuna was very well aware of that. And can you imagine what did he do? He just threw the golden bowl outside the temple gates. And this really surprised the thief. And he was wondering that, oh my God, this is for the first time I'm seeing someone who is not at all in possession of what he or she has and has actually thrown it out in my arms. So he took the bowl, and in order to express his gratitude, he went inside the temple and asked the Saint Nagarjuna that, how come you have thrown this bowl out? Did you know that I am waiting to rob you? Saint Nagarjuna said, yes, I was very well aware that you were following me and that your eyes were on my golden bowl. Because if I wouldn't have thrown it out, I wouldn't be able to sleep. And if I wouldn't be able to sleep, I wouldn't be well rested. And it's important for all of us to sleep. So I threw the golden bowl out for you right away without wasting your time and mine. The thief was really, really happy, but at the same time surprised to know that, I have been stealing all throughout my life, but I've never felt so poor. How can I become like you? Can you make me like you? And the saint just smiled and said, yes, you can. And then the thief jumped and said, oh, please don't tell me to stop doing this, stop doing that, stop stealing, because I'm not going to do that. Because this is something that I do for my living, and I'm going to continue in doing that. So please don't lay any terms and conditions. The saint just smiled and said, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to leave stealing. And yet you can be like me. So the thief was puzzled again. And he said, okay, tell me, what do I need to do? And I'm going to do exactly that. So the saint said, now, for the next 7 days, whenever you're going to steal, whenever you're entering somebody's house, breaking the lock or the door, getting inside the window of somebody's house, breaking the safe, just be conscious of your breath. That's about it. And come back and see me after 7 days. 7 days passed by. The thief came to meet the saint. He fell at his feet and he said, you have trapped me. You have really, really fooled me. All this while, I have met so many saints, and they have always told me that only if you stop stealing can you come to me. And when I came to you, all that you said was, you can do what you do. Just be conscious. Just breathe when you're doing it. And you know what? Whenever I was entering anybody's house to steal, to break open the door, and I was being aware of it, I just couldn't do it. So you have really changed my life. Please accept me. And that from that day onwards, the thief became the disciple of the saint. So this is the magic and the power of our consciousness. And just like any other natural resources, consciousness is something which is very, very limited in our own self. So we need to nurture it and we need to harness it. And how is it that we can do that? What are the practices that we can look at? Let's go ahead and let's look at that. So how can we be happy? And we all know that, there's so much of attention, especially since the pandemic. We all have gone online. We've been bombarded with so much of information that if somebody were to calculate, there's like all the information that we receive through our sensory neurons in our body, it's like 11 million bit of information that comes in. And human brain is able to give conscious attention to only 60 bits of information, and the rest is all unconsciously that we are doing it and listening and hearing and feeling and talking and touching. And right now, I don't know who's actually paying attention to me. So the next slide, please. Yeah. So what do we do? A famous philosopher, Blaise Pascal, said that all of our major problems stem from our inability to sit quietly in a room all alone by ourselves. And how many of us agree to that? If you could put in the chat box that yes or no. Do you agree that we are responsible for our problems because of our inability to sit quietly? Yep. Can we have the next slide? Great, thank you. So what do we do now? So what do we do? Okay, we multitask, and that's what we are best at. We are able to talk to somebody, we are able to cook at the same time, we are able to plan a grocery list at the same time, we are probably looking at something and sensing something at the same time, and that's what we all do. But believe me, we all suck at it, because if you're doing it unconsciously, then you don't do it well. But if you're doing it consciously, then multitasking becomes a little difficult. And I know many of you may not agree with me on this, and you may feel that, no, I'm a better multitasker, and I have managed the art, I've learned the art. But yes, as educators, as parents, we all multitask. I'm not saying that I don't do it. I do it myself. And unconsciously, I have discovered, I also realize that while I'm talking to my children, it's always the mobile that is in my hand, which is in my palm. And I feel, I just feel that, I need to be conscious about just leaving it aside and talking to my own kids first, or talking to someone whom you care about. So these are the small things, if we were to observe, also amounts to doing things unconsciously as compared to attempting them consciously. So let us now straight away dive into some of the practices that I have listed down, mindfulness practices that I have listed down, that we can probably experience out here before we will get into our action group. Yeah, next slide. Mindfulness to sit and stay. So there is this one activity which can be easily followed, and this is especially for educators because they are always on their toes, running from the staff room to the classroom, from one classroom to another classroom, from the canteen, upstairs, downstairs, in the elevator, all across the school, right? So when do we stop? Not when we come home, because that's again a different scene out there at home. So when do we stop? We can stop anytime, anywhere. We can stop, take a minute. We can stop when we are in the elevator, moving from first floor to the second. We can stop when we are moving from one classroom to the other classroom. Try simply stopping. Try a minute to arrive. There are many times when we may be late to enter, a classroom. Just take a minute. It's okay. Let your learners know that you're taking that minute. There are many times wherein I have not been able to reach somewhere on time, and as a result, your mind is running, you are tensed, you fear that everybody's going to judge you. But all that you need to do is just request and ask for permission to take that 1 minute to arrive, and just say, can I please take a moment to arrive? And just give yourself those 60 seconds to breathe. That's about it, and you're going to be fully present. Can we have the next slide? Open awareness. Now, this is something that we could do it all together. Take a few minutes. I would want all of you who are listening to me right now, take a few minutes, or rather not few minutes, but yeah, take a few seconds to observe your surroundings, where you are, if you're in the room or outside, wherever you are, and look around at all the objects that's there in your room, and try to associate yourself with the one you feel resembles you. So look around in your room. It could be anything. It could be chair, table, it could be a cushion, it could be sofa, it could be anything. Look around and try to associate yourself with any one object. And if you could just type that object in the comment section, I'm not going to ask you why you chose that. Just go ahead, type that object in the comment section. Great, thank you. Thank you so much for all the answers, Wardrobe. Lovely. Great. Now, if you were to reflect on this, what you can ask yourself is, was there anything that surprised you when you were looking around in your room? Did your association to a puzzle, or did your association to a book or a table surprise you? Yes. because now you looked at the table, or you looked at the puzzle, or you looked at that bottle in a different way, which brought about awareness in your own self. And what impact this can have if you were to bring this awareness in your work, if this awareness is something that you have in your work as well. So you can just imagine the impact that it's going to have. So this is open awareness. And we are going to be discussing many, many such practices to help all you educators out there to understand how to practice mindfulness in your daily life. And these practices are nothing, they don't require much of your time. Probably they just need maybe 60 seconds or not more than that, and I promise that. And these activities are going to be as per your choice. You can select any activities, but the commitment that we need from you is you must practice it. So that's about it. And I hope that you will join us to learn more about mindfulness. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Fiona. So let us come together and explore some of the best practices here. Over to you, Nina.
Thank you, Ms. Chhabria. Special thanks for sharing that wonderful story. Okay. We'd now like to welcome our next change facilitator, Dr. Bindiya Hassaram. She is the founder of Learning Differently, an organization that advocates for inclusive education in schools in India. Bindiya has extensive experience teaching students with learning disabilities in schools internationally. Bindiya is the academic coordinator at I Am a Teacher Mumbai, an alternative teacher education program. She is also the individualized program coordinator at the Gateway School of Mumbai. Along with Dr. Bindiya Hassaram, we also extend a very warm welcome to Mr. Amit Sharma, who is a doctoral candidate in the Curriculum Instruction and Teacher Education program at the College of Education, Michigan State University. His research is focused on understanding the phenomenon of joy through learning. He specifically focuses on mathematics. How interesting is that? Mathematics and joy in the same sentence for someone who's numerically challenged like me, to investigate the importance of aesthetics, self-directedness, and play in the learning process. Welcome, Dr. Bindiya and Mr. Sharma. Over to both of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nina, for that introduction. I have heard this thing so many times of how people do not associate math with aesthetics and joy, and I have reactions to that, but I'll hold on to that. Okay, let me just quickly share my screen with you guys. So, as you heard, both Rohit and Rakhee kind of talked, speaking about how the session is going to look like, and they give you a very quick overview of what they're going to be focusing on. So this is going to be in session 1 and 2, but session 3 and 4 is when uh, Bindiya and I are going to try and focus on how is it that you translate your ideas and understanding into action. Uh, just give me 1 second. Yeah, so the focus is essentially going to be once you have decided that you are going to be focusing on mindfulness in whatever scale, whatever scope that you have chosen for your organizational unit or for you as an individual, we are going to be focusing on two core aspects of bringing mindfulness into your life. The first one being change management, because this would involve a significant shift in the way you are doing things. And significant not in the sense of time commitment, but in terms of the emotional commitment and in terms of uh, the, 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 the commitment that you are bringing forth in terms of how invested are you in that idea and what is the kind of consistency that you bring to the practice. The second big element of translating your ideas and understanding into actions would be a framework called design thinking. And we are going to try and marry both these processes and try and facilitate you as to how to bring these ideas into your classrooms or into your organizational unit. So this is a question that I would want you to kind of focus on and share your responses with us in the chat. So what are the building blocks of any successful change process as you see them? Take a moment, just enter your responses as to what you think are the change, the elements of a successful change process. Thank you so much for your responses. Those are, maybe all of you can also look at the responses that the other people are populating. Take 15 more seconds to just enter whatever you think are the elements of a successful change intervention. Okay. Uh, Now again, there are different change frameworks that are out there, and as someone who joined education after my corporate stint, so I in my corporate stint with the organization that I was working for, uh, organizational design and organizational development was my core focus, and there were various change frameworks that I was introduced to, but this particular one kind of resonated the most with me. So now I would want you to go back to the responses that you entered and see where would it fit. I mean, maybe in all likelihood, it would fit into one of these things. So what essentially this equation kind of that is on your screen says that essentially, if there are 6 of these elements that are present, there is a very high likelihood of a successful change intervention, which is you have vision combined with incentive, combined with agreement amongst the team members, coupled with a solid action plan, coupled with the requisite skills that are there within the team, and then you have the resources. So if all these things are there, perhaps in all likelihood, you would have a successful change intervention. And you would also then want to reflect which are the things that did not occur to you in terms of, okay, these were not the first things that you identified as being important for a successful change intervention. So once you look at it, you would see that how in many instances, whenever we are trying to bring about a small or a large change, typically one of these missing elements kind of contribute to frustrations and challenges that we experience. This, by the way, is oops, I'm sorry. Ooh. Yeah, I hope you can see now. So yeah, this is, by the way, the Nostro model for managing complex change, and there are different models out there, but this one perhaps is one of the most well known model for change, and a very robust one. So I would encourage you guys to kind of have take out some time and go through it. But in a sense, we are going to be relying on this model and a couple of other models as we go forward in the second and third session, and and facilitate you through thinking about how is it that you can implement this change within your organization. So the idea is that what is the best implementation model in your context? So, and again, this is your model, this is your choice. Whether you are focusing on your individual self in terms of bringing about this change, or whether you are talking about episodic change in terms of, okay, so I say that I want to embed mindfulness for X minutes per day in my classroom, or number of days in a week, or whatever your preferred format is. Whether you want to start with teachers or the staff, or do you want to start with parents, whether you want to integrate it in the curriculum and in the pedagogy, or whether you are wanting to start small by, let's say, selecting a particular grade, or whether you are more ambitious and you're wanting it to do it across the schools and across all the processes. So, or it is a combination of these options, or maybe there are other options that you can think of. So essentially, whatever model, uh, whatever modality that you choose, the session 3 and session 4 are then going to be focused on processes and systems as to how do you take these ideas and translate it into systems and processes, and ensure that the people who are behind these systems and processes can then execute it in a manner that brings you and gets you the maximum results. So with that, I pass on the baton to Bindiya, who's then going to talk about these other elements and the pillars. Bindiya, over to you.
Thank you so much, Amit. So once you decide who you're bringing the change for, whether it's for yourself or your leadership team or your faculty or your students, you would use those team members to actually design the change for your team itself. Um, we're going to embark on a change process that is very human-centered and democratic, because it involves the people who are creating the change for the group that are going to use the change. Next slide, please, Amit. For those of you who are new to a process called design thinking, that this is the process that we will use to create the change that you want to implement in your school. The design thinking process is a methodical and scientific process, but it's very much grounded in empathy. It's founded on empathy, because you're making the change for the people who are going to use the change. And this framework gives us a new mindset to problem solve. Next slide. The design thinking process involves 5 steps. The first of which involves you talking to the people who you're going to implement the change for, to really find out what their needs are, what their ideas are, and you define the ideals that you want to get to through empathizing with the people for whom you're going to implement the change. Once you define the ideals, then you brainstorm with your team members. You brainstorm every possibility that you could use, and from there you prioritize which ones do we want to try out. Once you sort of pick the first idea you want to try out, you would prototype it and implement it for a bit and test it out with those users, and then come back to the ideation and prototyping process. So what we'll do is we will show you how to use design thinking. And in this case, for our project, we will do it to implement mindfulness in your school, but it's also a really good process to implement any other changes. So I think double benefits there. So you've now heard from us about why it has been important for us to include mindfulness in our lives, and in fact, how it's integral to all of our lives. And we hope that you'll join us on a journey to bring mindfulness into your context and your lives too. And I'll hand it over now for questions and answers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, all 4 change facilitators. We have a few questions, and we'll try and answer as many as we can in the next 5 to 7 minutes. I'll club a couple of questions together, if you don't mind. One of the questions says that though we understand mindfulness and we are involved in meditation, we still have our meltdown moments. The other question is that is it really possible to be non-judgmental at all times? Because if we are non-judgmental, aren't we really revealing social apathy? Everything is all right. Do we just take it as it is? So these are the questions that have come. Would you like to answer them, please? Anyone?
I can maybe take on the second question there with a little story. Being non-judgmental doesn't mean that you don't act. And so I may not judge. I can watch what's happening in front of me. I can be aware. To the first question, I can be aware of my feelings. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling frustrated, and be aware that that's how I feel. And I'm not going to judge how I feel, but now that I'm aware that I'm frustrated, I'm going to be very conscious about how I interact with the person that perhaps I'm frustrated with, or with a situation that is frustrating to me. And I'm going to choose actions that are going to allow me to be heard, so that hopefully I can diminish my frustration.
If I may add to what you said, Fiona, if I could just add to something. One of the epiphanic moments of my life was when a student from Dharamshala, living with the Dalai Lama, was telling me that he was extremely angry by nature. And the Dalai Lama once called him and just said, so-and-so, you have to fight from a center of peace. And that really hit me, because this boy was young and he was angry. And he said, when the Dalai Lama said this to me, it didn't make sense initially, but this is what I try to do every moment of my life. So I think even if there are these social issues, perhaps fighting from a center of peace is the way to make a difference. Thank you. Anyone else would like to respond? Any of the other change facilitators?
Regarding the meltdowns, being a mother of two boys, always on my toes. So I can only say that if you were, mindfulness is one of the many tools, in order to be conscious and also to, take your time out. So we all know of the me time that we have. Some of us in our me time like to listen to music, go for a walk, or paint or anything else. So mindfulness is something when you start practicing the meltdowns, where definitely the number of meltdowns definitely reduces. So I'm not saying that this is a tool wherein you practice and you're going to attain you're going to become a monk or something. No, we're not asking you to do that. It's just that a daily practice will help you to reduce the number of meltdowns that you have, and I can vouch for that as a mother. Yeah.
I'll just add to one image that Fiona had in the beginning: mindful versus mindful.
Mindful, yes.
Mindfulness is a practice that invites us to be aware of what's coming to us, whether in forms of thoughts, emotions, experiences. It does not say that it will not come. So meltdowns can come, being aware of that. Happiness can come, being aware of that. I think that's a little bit of piece that I just want to add to what Rakhee said.
Absolutely, absolutely.
There is one question here. Is mindfulness different from meditation? It seems very similar.
I can respond, and please anyone add. I think, Shobha, thank you for asking that question. In my mind, the way I understand it, there's some difference. If I put it in a way that a meditation can be mindfulness meditation. So mindfulness is basically an invitation to come to the present moment. That can extend into the meditation practices. Meditative practices could be of various kinds. It could be one kind, could be mindfulness meditation. Am I making sense at all?
Yes, yes. I have another question which has just come in. Isn't it time that we moved from compassion to allophilia? When you talk about compassion, the other is still the other, but when you're talking of allophilia, the other is literally one. You experience that sense of oneness. So is it time now to move from compassion to allophilia?
I think this ties a little bit to the previous question about mindfulness and meditation. And I would say that the deepest form of meditation is oneness. Mm-hmm. Mindfulness is the beginning of awareness, whereas meditation gets you to that oneness. So yes, we should be moving in that direction, but it's a process, and we're all at different stages, I would say, of that process.
And I have one more. Donna, do you have questions? I have one more question here.
Yeah, there is one question. As a government school principal, you have to multitask. There are things being thrown at you, from regulations to rules to a child crying to medical emergency, etc. And plus the numbers. How do you manage to practice mindfulness in such a state?
I think we will learn about that in session 1 and 2.
Yeah, come try it out. Try it out. Yeah, wonderful. We vouch for the difference. Yeah.
Well, Mike, the question I have is absolutely similar. It's answered because this person asked that in large classes where you have 60 to 80 students, how do you really practice mindfulness? This teacher says, I go distracted. But I think that has been answered adequately. So with that, we would really encourage you to take advantage of the knowledge and the expertise that the change facilitators have. Sign up the Google Forms, become a part of the action group, and let's try and make that change. Thank you very much. Over to you, Nina.
Thank you, Dr. Vivina and Ms. Reen, for that wonderfully engaging Q&A session. I now invite Ms. Valerie Mendonza, Senior Associate Researcher at CIE, co-housed in IMM Debat, to kindly propose the vote of thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fiona Reynolds, for a very highly effective presentation. It was very interesting. Many thanks also to the team of change facilitators comprising Rohit Kumar, Rakhee Chhabria, Bindiya Hassaram, and Amit Sharma. We are aware of your commitment to the summit and the regular meetings that you have had despite your busy schedules. We also thank you for putting together a very meaningful action project. Please give me a moment here till I share my screen. I'm sorry about that. Can everyone see the screen? Yeah. So the details for the action project by Ms. Fiona Reynolds are up on our GTPS for Change website. The name of the project is Developing and Using Self-Awareness in Educational Leaders. The Google form is available at www.gtpsforchange.org. We would also invite you to I don't know, this is not moving, but see you tomorrow for our session from 4 to 5:50 on weaving the social and emotional quilt in early and primary years by our early elementary school principal of Fazlani, Ms. Myra Goel, and her wonderful team of change facilitators. We have a special guest lecture after that. Have you heard the music? Do you hear the music? Should you hear the music? By Ms. Khurshid Kurdoy, who is an advisor to global NGOs and an accomplished musician. That is for tomorrow on the 6th of December. Our thanks go to all the participants who have joined us today from all over India and different countries of the world as well. Do register for our parenting summit from 8th to 31st of January 2021. As you also know, the sessions are scheduled only for weekends for your convenience. We need you to work collaboratively with us to bring about the change we want to see in the world. Do follow our social media handles. We tweet at GTPS4C. We're on Instagram as @GTPS4Change and on LinkedIn as well. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe and happy.
Thank you, everyone.